Erica Huggard from Emporia High School in Emporia, Kansas. Welcome to the Anatomy of Clay Learning System podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for your time today. We appreciate it. Could you just start out telling us a little bit about Emporia High School and also the community that you serve?
Okay, so I teach anatomy and physiology, college bio, introduction to healthcare this semester. Um, I'll teach a class called medical terminology next fall, which is also in the healthcare pathway. And I also sometimes teach sophomore bio, so it just depends on sections, but I routinely have around 80 anatomy and physiology students, 40 to 50 college bio students, and then I have about 50 intro to healthcare students right now. Um, Emporia is a large kind of rural town, and we have about 1,300 students here in our school. We have one
Okay.
high school. And so we have quite a diverse population. We have a large population of low socioeconomic students, and we have a large population of ESL students, and we also have a high percentage of minority students. So it's an interesting it's an interesting town because we have a lot of diversity here. We have one high school. We're kind of an hour away from any really large town. We're an hour away from Topeka, which is the capital, and an hour away from Wichita, and about an hour and a half away from Kansas City. So anyway, we're kind of a little bit isolated, but we do have a lot to offer here at Emporia High School. In our pathway CTE classes, and I teach in the health science pathway, the pathway that leads to CNA, and also anatomy and physiology leads to is a technical level class in our biomedical pathway, which is a lot of students also take that if they're going into nursing or medical field. And we also have a sports med strand as well. So I get a lot of
Wow.
anatomy students in there.
Wow. And
Yeah,
the healthcare pathway is pretty popular.
it's very popular. Our intro to healthcare path class, just the introductory level class next year, has 190 students taking it. So we take that as
Wow.
a one semester class, and that's the intro level, and then they start taking technical and application level. It's our most popular pathway, at least in our science pathway. I would bet it's right there. I haven't looked at the pathway numbers for the other pathways in the school, but it's very popular.
Yeah. How about just a little bit of your own background? How long have you been teaching there, and have you taught anywhere else before that?
I have been teaching for 18 years, and right after I graduated, I taught for a semester in Holton, which is just north of Topeka. And then I took this job, which is where I student taught, and I had interviewed in like 4 different schools, and I was offered the job everywhere, but this was the place I wanted to work. There's 10 science teachers in the department, and I just really knew I wanted to work in a department where there were a lot of veterans around me and there wasn't a lot of turnover, and I wanted to be around that experienced staff, so that I could learn and grow. And so we've just consistently been a really strong department. We're now in a brand new science wing. I just really feel like I'm kind of living the dream here. Have a lot of students in job security and teaching in a brand new facility. And I get to work with these amazing products and hands-on
Yeah.
materials all the time with my students. And, because we do all these hands-on things, students keep coming. They want to be in our class. So that's
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a quick second.
okay.
Did you always have sort of a science bent?
Did I always plan on studying
Uh,
science or
or
being?
teaching? Were you always interested in the science, teaching science as opposed to English or math or yeah,
That's interesting. I
yeah.
started out, my major was elementary education, and then I
Okay.
worked in a preschool, and I changed my
Wow.
major to secondary ed. And my two favorite classes that I had my second semester when I decided to change my major were health and biology. And so I have a certificate and a bachelor's of in science in biology, and I also have one in health. And so, so at that time, it was kind of a rare thing to get licensed in health and biology. It was more PE and health. And I knew I didn't want to teach PE because, it's hard kids don't always want to participate in PE, and I didn't want to deal with that. So I decided to pursue biology, which was a challenging subject for me. I came from a small school and I had very limited knowledge in science when I graduated high school. And so I had to work very hard in college, but I was always very curious about science. And so for me, when I graduated and started teaching, I've just never stopped learning. I have a master's in curriculum and instruction, and then I have 36 graduate hours on top of it. All of those are in science, either biology or physical science. And I
Wow.
teach here and I teach at the technical college across the street. So I have my toe in that, where I'm working with students that are going to be dental hygienists or they're going to be LPN. And I just really love that I got to pair my health background and my biology background, and anatomy is just, it's my absolute favorite class to teach. I still really love college bio, but anatomy and physiology is my fave.
That's great. So you have a full-time job at the high school, and you also teach classes at the
Adjunct.
technical.
Yeah.
How do you make that work? That just sounds like a lot.
It's just kind of my personality. I've kind of been one of those people like all the way through college. I worked way through college. I'm a first generation college graduate. My parents didn't go to college. I have had family members that have had technical certificates, but no one ever graduated from a 4-year college. And I paid for school myself, just like my brother did. And so for me, it was when I was in college, I was working 40 hours a week. So working and going to school. And so then just having one job, honestly, for the first part of my career before I had kids, I didn't really know what to do with my time. I really took up reading and like working out. And, so I'm just kind of one of those people that likes to stay busy. And then I got this job at the tech college about 10 years ago. And I love the blend of having the experience of getting to know what it's like for non-traditional students and being able to like weave those experiences into what I'm teaching and telling the stories for my high school students. It's just again, just continues to be very rewarding in both places in different ways.
Will you end up having some students at the technical college that you had already taught in the high school then?
Consistently every semester.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
That must be interesting. At least you know kind of something
Yep.
about them and what they're interested in, how they learn.
Yeah, the only time it got really tricky is through 2020 to 2021 when we were teaching through mass and through screens, and not always would our students show their faces on the screen. And then I'm like, I really know your name. I can recognize your name. It's ringing a bell, but I have nothing to
Yeah.
connect your face to. And so that has been, I still occasionally still have that happen where I'm like, were you in my class during COVID? Because I don't have a face, but I still recognize your name.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, so you've been teaching there quite a while. When did you bring anatomy and clay into the classroom? When did you first come across it?
Okay, so I know it's been at least 10 years because my son is 10. And
Okay.
when I went to Hutchinson to be trained at ESDEC,
Mhm.
he was a baby. So it's been at least 10 years. And then I think the first year after I was trained, I only had the one mannequin. And then I wrote for Perkins money. I wrote immediately after I went through that workshop. I came back and I was like, I have to have this. And so my principal told me, well, there might be a way to make it happen. And so I sat down in May and I just wrote like all the benefits of it, which I could list a lot. But what I knew at that point was that it was a one-time investment and the clay was reusable and that this was going to create a hands-on experience, and I was going to be able to reuse this clay over and over and over again. And so although it seems like a pretty big price tag to start off with, which I did the mannequins and the split kit. So for every mannequin, we got two, a right and a left. Then I was able to use mostly all the clay that came with those. And we started right away. That's the spring after that. So I had them. I got 24. And then our intro to healthcare got trained, and she got some more. So I think I have like 32 half bodies now. And we use them in anatomy for all the superficial muscles. And I'm a little bit like, I'm probably unusual when it comes to the superficial muscles, because we build 63 because I can't part ways with
Wow.
them.
Yeah.
So
Wow. Wow.
I really, really love it. And we spend 3 weeks. We build and quiz every day, build and quiz. And the students know that I'm very particular about their muscle fiber directions and their anatomical correctness. Because when we go to the cadaver lab, which I do every year with the students, I take them to Emporia State University. I want them to be able to name and identify the muscles from their anatomical position and their muscle fiber direction. And that's always something that really impresses the instructors there at Emporia State, that these mannequins help my students so well that as soon as they're in front of a cadaver, they know what they're looking at.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. 63 muscles. That's quite the work,
Yeah.
quite the effort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes gravity, by the end, especially when all the students really love to build the glutes, then by the end, gravity has
Yeah. Yeah.
its impact.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. How do your students do with the cadaver work and making that transition from clay to cadaver? They do pretty well?
Uh, to me, like, I know what it was like before we had these mannequins.
Yeah.
And I took the students to the cadavers, and now, which we dissected cats before that, and which is a very good dissection, but the muscles on a cat are very different anatomically, and it's very difficult to make the switch and now look at what you're to
Yeah.
identify any of the muscles on a human. And I would say, obviously you have your students that on a muscle practical with that many muscles that are scoring A, B, C, D. And my students that are scoring up there in the A's and the B's, they could identify those superficial muscles easily right off of the cadaver. And many students, they know and recognize them when the instructor says the name. They just aren't always able to recall them, because when we test over that, they have to know without a word bank all those muscles without a word bank. And I really encourage them to not be off by more than a letter when they know the muscle, when they write the name of the muscle without a word bank. So anyway, even my students that didn't score as well on that, they still recognize the muscle because we worked with it so much and they built it. They just might not be able to come up with the name of it if they're asked. But to me, it was night and day different for just the impact, and just that's just super impressive. The instructor was like, wow, look at all of these. And especially the forearm, I took human cadaver dissection, and that's 6 weeks learning all the parts of a human, 3 hours a day, 6 weeks. And I thought the forearm was so hard because it just goes, if you're not really careful with thumbs and pinkies. And I really had to learn how to teach it with the anatomy, which helped me, know all the tricks for how to help them know which one we're looking at, whether we're flexors or extensors, or if it's radialis or ulnaris. Anyway, so I just think that that's super cool when they can just pick that up. And I was taking that at that point, I was 30 and taking it as a graduate student, and they're in their 17, 18 years old. And
Yeah.
I mean, they're leaving here knowing so much more than I know and knew when I was in high school, and probably even more than I knew when I was in college. I tell them that too. I graduated with a bachelor's and I didn't know this.
Yeah. Wow, that's impressive. So it sounds like the students really take to the system overall. It's sort of just part of, your the culture there. This is what you do, and you've had it so long that students coming into the class know what to expect.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've seen the models around.
Yes, yes. We have them on display in our display cases when we're not using them. And then, this year I'm teaching intro to healthcare for the first time, and I really am enjoying. I took a 2 or 3 week section here to do a body system or system to just for the students to explore. And so if I get to teach this class again and we have a new person coming in teaching intro to healthcare next year, I'm going to encourage them to use the mannequins to let the students just explore a system. And so that's what you're seeing here on these mannequins behind me. I have students that chose the lymphatic system and one that chose the digestive system. And then I have some students that are really interested in the sports pathway, and I have these joint models that I got before COVID. I used to teach a section of sports medicine when we were just starting it. And I had them build these joints. And so they figured out that the first thing they have to do is put the ligaments on to connect these bones to make them stay together. And then what's in between the bone in those cases? Well, maybe the meniscus or a labrum. And so they're learning all these parts by building it and then adding the muscles and those tendons on those muscles. And so they actually get to see from the layers that you're adding how this joint works. And then when they're adding the fibers, the student asked when he was adding the fibers on the joint, so do these fibers affect the way that the direction of these fibers on the ligament, does this affect the way this part of the joint works? Yeah, those fibers affect the direction that that ligament can move. And if it's stressed in the wrong direction, then you're going to get a tear or you're going to get a sprain and you're going to pull, or it's going to cause, some micro tears or something like that. And so it's just in my mind, in today's world, there is nothing better than when students are manipulating hands-on materials and they are building them from the ground up. They are taking them from the small parts and making them into the whole, because they do not have that opportunity when they are in a digital world. And that is the hardest part. And if you'll look even further behind me, you'll see my pictures on the board. I take them from 2D, which way do I need to move? 2D, right?
Yeah.
And then I have to go to 3D, and then we do dissection. And oftentimes we'll do a clay model too. And those clay models help them to understand because they're putting on the artery and they're putting on the veins. And now, because they're building that, they're helping to make that whole schema in their brain about where those parts are oriented and how they come together. And that's just the problem with a digital world and how we really learn as a species. We've never learned in a 2D world. We've always learned hands-on, and students crave this. And just seeing this now in an introductory level and just giving them an opportunity to do it on their own and just to come over and give tiny little bits of information to them when they have questions, give them a little bit of support, just to push them a little bit farther. It's just been awesome to see them just take off and do it.
That's great. Do you have any tips or suggestions for maybe a teacher who's just starting with the anatomy and clay system, just in terms of, getting familiar with it and what maybe systems to start with, or how to approach it with students who might not be as comfortable as your students sound like they are?
Okay, well, I would say that, it's depending, your group size matters. So if you have students in 3 to 4, that's going to be helpful. Sometimes 4 can be a problem because you might have somebody that doesn't have as much of an active role. But it's been fine this year for me with 3 to 4, and I just have to make sure that I'm facilitating that cooperation. But in terms of what it took for me to be able to do it, number one, I loved the hands-on workshop I did. I did a full day training. Maybe it was 2. I think it was a
Yeah.
day and a half. And that helps because you really need to use the material, right?
Yeah.
I have not been trained on these joints at all. And I took them out of the box that I bought them before COVID because I used to teach this class. And then our athletic trainer started teaching the class. And then I got to teach this intro to healthcare class. And I thought, I'm going to find a way to use those because number one, I'm really like, I don't like to waste things. And this is my thing. So as soon as I found out I had this table of boys that were interested in sports med, I said, I'm going to come up with a body system and a project, and I'm going to have them do these joints. So I have not used these. And this is what they did. Okay. I mean, this is the ankle and the ligaments.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
every one of these ligaments has a name, and they put it in their slideshow. And so when they present to the class, they're going to present on all the ligaments and their names, which we talked about because this is an intro class. They don't know the names of these bones in the feet yet, but they're going to talk about why the ligaments are named what they are, which is for every bone. And this one in the elbow, he's the one that was asking the question about these fibers. So notice how detailed he got on these little fibers here on the ligaments, all on his own. And so again, I haven't used those. I haven't been trained on that. And with a little bit that I do with joints in anatomy, we were able to do this. They were able to do this. This is not my work. This is their work. So I guess I kind of went down that road with, I learned by doing, just like they learned by doing. And so I think a training is super helpful if you can get a hands-on training, and then you just got to do it. And it wouldn't even be a bad thing to do a exploration systems project, or just do it one system at a time and everybody's doing it together, and then you're learning as you go with what your expectations are. And, the first year that I did the muscles, it took a lot longer. And I didn't know how many muscles we were going to do. And I was still trying to do, again, I still tried to do all the muscles that I originally taught from a packet that was 2D. And I still tried to, I can't cut them out. I just love them all so much. And so I still do them, but I can go faster now because I can correct them very quickly. I can tell them like how I want the clay rolled. You can learn about how to use the extruders that make long strips for nerves, and it just makes things a lot faster when you've had that training. And then again, you just get better with it the more you do it. I recently had a teacher from Burlington come over here and watch me do the muscles, and she's a new teacher. And I'm like, this is a game changer. It's a game changer for students. It's a game changer for you. They're going to be excited about your class. It's going to give you something that they can really connect their learning to. And I told her, if she can get into training, that's going to be a great start. And she's got a small class, like 8 to 10. So you don't need a lot to get started with that. But anyway, we learn by doing just like they do. So you just do it.
Yeah. And that purchase you made 10 years ago basically was a one-time purchase and is held up for a decade.
So using the same clay. Yeah, sometimes the clay gets mixed, but like I told the students, we might want some orange. So we just keep it. I've had to order a little bit more brown from time to time, but we're building large numbers of muscles, like it's a lot. So, we do lose little bits here and there that just gets left on the mannequins, or, it just gets dirty and you can't use it. But very rarely, I don't have to order often at all. Maybe once every 2 years. And it comes by the pound. And so you just order it. It's very good stuff.
That's great. Wow. I'm just curious if there's one particular system you enjoy teaching the most, and different question, is there one particular system that the students really seem to take to?
Well, I would say that muscles for sure. It's definitely my favorite thing to do. And I do spend more time on it than probably all the other systems, just because I think that they spend so much time on origin and insertion. And right before that, we've really hit all the parts of the bones, not just the bones, but the parts of the bones. And so those really come into play on origin and insertions. And so really reinforcing that anatomical terminology on those bones. And so for me, that is my favorite part, and they really do enjoy it. But I really like building the brain out of clay and the nerves, and just being able to connect all of them on the mannequin together really helps create that whole concept of all these systems working together. But there's not always time for me in my class to do it like that. If I was, like the teacher from Burlington I talked about, I'd teach my whole class this way. You have 8 to 10 students,
Yeah.
It's a lot different than when you're talking about getting 70 to 80 students through the content too. So, to me, that it all builds very nicely together. And I've
Yeah.
done like, well, we're going to build the heart and we're going to build the brain, but we're not going to put it in the mannequin, because when I built the brain, I want to build it bigger. I want to build it
Right.
bigger than what's in the mannequin. And then when I build the heart, we want to build it bigger. And then I've even done parts of a muscle like sarcomere, and I took those I went to that training twice, actually. Now that I think about it, I went back this year and I took back some things that I was doing with it. And I was like, you've got to see this. Like, parts of a muscle and parts of a sarcomere was just like so abstract for students. And even for me, trying to learn how to teach it. So I built it out of clay. And then once I built it out of clay, and I was like, oh, this makes so much sense when we're talking about fascicles and fibers and myofibrils and how they go together. And now I can show you in my model, and you can build the model. And then building a kidney using the extruder and putting out a whole bunch of red and blue clay. And then you can really just build those capillaries down there in the nephrons, and I think we got that an extra one. Just little tips like that you learn just because, it's fun to use the clay and you have it. It's a good resource. We get this clay out in biology and use it for meiosis and mitosis, like it's just so helpful to use something hands-on.
Especially in this digital age where everything's laptop or phone, or
Yep.
look at us on Zoom right now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow, it sounds like it's just completely part of the atmosphere and part of the ecosystem of your science wing there, having these models around. Yeah,
Yes.
very good. Wow, what a great rundown, Erica. This has been fantastic, and we're very glad to see it being used in so many different ways, and the students take to it too as well. So thank you for all your insights today on the podcast, and wish you well with all your future classes and endeavors.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate having time to talk with you. And, I just really hope that anything that I've given you today helps inspire teachers to do something hands-on with students, and that helps inspire students to go into the field of science. Thank you so
Perfect.
much.